through the darkness, a bright red light that seemed to sear through the dark room. I couldn't make out many of the silhouettes that painted against the wall, but I pressed back, hardly breathing as it began to move through the room. I pressed, hoping, praying that it wouldn't come up to our conveyor belt. Then I heard Scar snicker to the side of me. I thought she'd gone crazy. But she finally smacked my arm and said, "You're fine. So long as we stay under the conveyor belt, it can't catch us." I thought, "Scar, you've got way too much confidence for this situation right now." I had no idea what was going on, and I was terrified. But looking to the side, Scar was completely relaxed. And I said, "Scar, have you seen where we are? How can you be so normal?" And she said, "It's fine, G. We'll get out of here. I know this place." And for a moment, I thought that maybe this was a trap that she had set or something, but through the extremely dim lighting, I was able to see more, and I could make out the haunted look on her face, and I knew that she wanted to be here as much as I did. I forced myself to sit down and try to calm down. I said, "How can you be so sure about this place?" And she said, "I'm not going into backstory. I'm not telling any stories about this place. Just, I know how to get us out of here." I wondered how long she'd spent in this place to know exactly what was going on, as she explained that the Teletubbies come back to feed twice a day for an hour at a time, and it's not safe to be out when they're out in the fields, but when they're feeding, you can know where they are and get out of the complex. Waiting was as terrifying to me as the idea of facing the Teletubbies, but I knew that was the only thing to do. And that raised another question for me. I said, "Scar, you said this is Teletubbies, like the kid show, animals with TV tummies?" She said, "Yep, this is the one." I said, "That doesn't quite match up. Maybe I missed that episode as a kid." And she said, "Look, seers see what are on these other worlds. They can interpret it however they want." And that was as disconcerting a thought as before, that someone would interpret this into a kid show. And she continued, she said, "Honestly, I think it's seers' connection to this world and just human connection, that's why babies cry for no reason." I didn't like that thought either. I just wanted to be out. And she said, "Yeah, seers like you see things, they paint things, and just take the worlds for how they see them, depict them." I said, "Wait a minute, you said seers like me? I'm a traveler, aren't I?" And she said, "You, G, are both. That's what makes you special. Some people can see into other worlds, some can travel. Travelers are much rarer than seers, people with high levels of creativity. But you have innate... You are a seer and a traveler through both your massive creativity and adventurous side." And she said, "That's part of the reason why I need you." And I said, "Why? And what does that even mean for me that I'm a seer? How's that going to change anything?" And she said, I can't tell you yet, but I will." I looked at her and I said, "You don't know, do you? You sound like you know everything. How long have you been traveling?" She said, "I'm not getting into my backstory, I told you." And I let her quiet down, mind full of all kinds of thoughts. And I started thinking about Scar herself, and I said, another question while we're sitting here. How in the world do you do the things you do? Your speed and how fast you run and your strength, like, where do you get that from? And she said, I've been around the block. I've picked up abilities as I've gone. But I'm still human, same as you. And not interesting. Well, I guess that answers that question. And I said, in your pockets, I've seen you pull an inordinate amount of things from your pockets. And she kind of smirked at that. Finally got a smile out of her. And she explained that she'd gone to a tailor at the end of the universe and had pocket universes sewn into her pockets so that she could fit anything that she needed into her jacket. I thought, okay, that's kind of cool. I need one of those. And she said, you've got one. It's your scabbard. That's where your sword disappears into. And you can widen the loop to fit bigger things in. I thought, nifty. I said, yeah, it's kind of a necessity for travelers with all the things we pick up. I said, all right, that makes sense. And again, I became aware of our surroundings. Some time passed. The Scar estimated from where the sun was at in the sky that we had about 2 hours defeating time, and much of that time passed as we talked, because talking was better than letting thoughts wander in this place. And eventually the machinery began to come to life, and things began to move, and the conveyor belt above our heads began to move, which released some green slime on us. And I tried not to think about what was going on, especially as the Teletubbies came back to feed. And they must have been able to smell us or something. I'm not surprised. Because the howling began, and there was nothing that I've heard as painful and terrible as those screams. We endured them as they attacked the walls, and I prayed that they'd hold up. Scar was confident that they would. But that didn't help me feel much better. Eventually, the food was dispensed to their doors, and they began to eat, and that sound was disturbing. Better than what had come before, but not by much. And I waited. It felt like forever for Scar to finally say it was okay to go. And she finally stood up and said, all right, let's move out while they're busy. And she began to walk along underneath the conveyor belt until she got to a point where there was a hole in the wall that had been carved out, and the metal was bent away, and an essence of evil seemed to seep through the darkness. I knew whatever was in that room should not exist, and I didn't want to go. And Scar disappeared into the darkness, and I stood there. I didn't want to go forward. I'd rather go back. And a hand came out of the darkness, and Scar said, Gee, it's okay. I'll lead you through. I'll take you through the darkness. We will make it out. I'll take you every step of the way. I won't let you go. And in that moment, I realized that I trusted Scar. I took her hand and stepped into the darkness. If the first room was dark, the second was complete and utter darkness. I couldn't make out a thing, and I didn't want to. I could feel things in the room as we passed. Nothing moving, nothing alive, but things. And all through the way, Scar led me on. And we came through, and I did the best that I could to just push forward. We made our way, turning, moving around things that I couldn't make out in the darkness, and finally entering, we left the room and I could feel whatever it was moving away behind us as we went on. We went through hallways and I became aware that there was light. And I was so happy to see light. We came around a couple more bends and there was a hole in the wall just big enough for us to squeeze through. And as the light appeared, I felt something drop from me. And I felt like myself again. I realized that I had been numbed. And I could only imagine what it would have been like if I hadn't been numbed going through that room. I didn't know exactly what it was, but we got to the hole. And Scar said, all right, we get out and we run. Go straight. It's about a 20-minute run and we'll get to a portal. And we got through and we ran as fast as we could. And I cannot tell you how blessed a feeling it was to get out of that complex and be back under a blue sky, even under a skeletal sun. It was just good to be free, and we ran and ran and ran over hill, through valley. It was a green blur, and I couldn't tell how long it was. But the moment we came over a ridge and were able to see the portal, I could make it out. After uniform green, I knew the portal. And we ran with renewed vigor to the thing. And we'd come over a couple more hills when I heard the sound of a Teletubby again. And I thought, no, we were so close. We kept running as fast as we could. And Scar could have run ahead, but she kept holding onto my hand, and we kept running. And we got over one last hill, and we're running through the valley. And Scar pulled out a gun and started shooting. I don't know if she thought it would do any good, but, anything to keep him away. And we were not far from the portal when something slammed down on top of me and knocked my head to the ground. There was an explosion, and the jacket that Darren had given me completely shredded. The force of a Teletubby landing on top of me exploded the jacket, and the shrapnel didn't hurt me, but exploded outward and shredded through the Teletubby's underside, spilling green blood on me. And Scar screamed at my side, pulled out her lightsaber and slashed the Teletubby through its side, and grabbed it by the hide and threw it onto the hill on the far side. It slammed against the ground, and she grabbed the lightsaber, turned it off, grabbed me, threw me over her shoulders, and sprinted to the portal. From over her shoulder, I watched in horror as the Teletubby's side fused back together and it healed, and it pulled up and just started bounding after us when we came within the portal. In the moment we felt within its grasp, I went back to Earth. Everything collapsed around us and resolved into a green field with long grass and trees on the far side. The sun, normal, was setting, and Scar and I collapsed to the grass and laughed uncontrollably. To know that we were safe was like nothing I've ever felt before. We lay in the grass for I don't know how long, just breathing in the air and getting to be able to breathe again. And eventually after I'd calmed down, I became aware that someone was walking through the meadow or something, and kind of pulled myself up to see Darren walking through the field. I pulled myself up, and Scar pulled herself up. I became immediately aware that I was wearing his jacket, completely shredded and covered in green blood. And Darren had a look of betrayal on his face. He said, "Reggie, what is going on? I gave you the opportunity to give this up. Why did you go back?" And Scar stepped stepped between the two of us and said, "Quiet, Darren. Stop trying to manipulate G. He's trying to make a decision of his own, and he doesn't need you there to stop him." Darren completely ignored her and said, "Reggie, my offer still stands. I can get you away from this, but you need to leave it alone. I can't help you if you're going to go back to this." And Scar kept hammering him and said, "Stop trying to manipulate him. You can't control him." And Darren finally turned on her. And he said, "No, you stop, Scar. You know exactly what you're doing, and if you have your way, you will destroy Reggie." He turned back at me. And he said, "Reggie, the choice is yours. Come back with me. I'll fix this so you don't have to worry about it. Or go with Scar and I won't be able to help you anymore. I won't be able to stop things from happening." I stood there. I didn't know what to say. They both stood watching me, and I couldn't go. I couldn't move. And eventually Darren dropped his head. He said, "I understand." He said, "From this point on, I'm sorry for what's going to happen." He turned around and walked back through the grass. I watched my friend disappear through a portal. End of chapter 6.